Yeah.
Yep.
Green light.
Seth, can you hear Jordan? We just want to make sure before we get started.
Do
Okay.
you see the metal?
Okay. Thank you.
The dust out.
Okay, I think we're good to go. So we're going to begin our first budget workshop. We're going to begin with the presentation of the police department budget with our chief, Jordan Koshan.
So you've never done this before, so I'm gonna tell you how we're gonna do it. You're gonna tell us, or Isbeth's gonna tell us what page we're starting on.
Okay, very good.
So he has provided you a separate packet. So we're gonna go through this whole one just on him. Okay.
For him and for today's department. It's just not a big issue.
I know, I try to keep it on my one main packet, but
I know, it's easier for us to work off the main packet.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
then you have 3 sets of this and this.
Just talk about it. I'm grateful for everything you've given me. We've gotten so far. We've had you zero. She's still nervous this weekend. Which is Eight.
8.
Thank you. I would have got there. Oh, yeah. That's it.
Good evening. How is everyone?
Great. How are you?
I am new at this, obviously, and we talked about starting on a packet. I was going to just kind of touch on some of the achievements and goals prior to that, if that's all right with everybody.
Yep.
I am Jordan Koshan, I'm the Chief of Police of Miniscule. I'm happy to be here tonight. Just to begin, I'd like to thank all the town board members, the town supervisor, and the comptroller's office. Obviously, getting a department head up to speed for the fiscal constraints of a budget is quite a feat. I'm not going to say that I am expert on this at this point. However, I'm learning very quickly, and I thank you all for all of your patience and guidance through that process. So some of the things I want to touch on to begin with, the Miniscule Police Department achievements for 2021. The comptroller, I don't know how long we've been doing this for, but requested some achievements and goals moving forward. And I think that's an excellent idea to kind of recognize where it is we're spending these monies, how we're allocating staffing, some of the things we're accomplishing on, and some of the things we're hoping to accomplish on. So to begin with the 2021 achievements, the first one was we were able to continue to purchase a new policy and training platform in the Lexipol and Police One Academy software. For folks out there that don't know what this is a hybrid model of training. Usually police training is done in person. I can tell you that it's very difficult to do in-person police training for everything. The Lexipol and Police One Academy model has given us the ability to get more real-time training, more progressive police training to more members over a course of period of time that's more efficient, is the way I would describe it. And that's been excellent for us. Things like procedural justice that I know was a part of the CNA recommendation. We were able to do that for our entire membership in 2021. And we look to make that an annual training through this model, as well as kind of that hybrid model in person as well moving forward. So that's an excellent thing. The secondary branch of that is the Lexipol Policy Training Manual, or excuse me, Lexipol Policy Manual. When you talk about progressive policing, the foundational piece of any good police agency is a policy manual. And this Lexipol Policy Manual has allowed us so far to start reviewing these policies to be able to effectuate what it is the community needs and demands are, which are a progressive police department that's being responsive, that's being transparent, has oversight, and has all the policies in place to do that. And this is going to allow us through the implementation task force for the reform to be able to effectuate that as well. And we're really excited that we were able to start that in 2021, and we looked at it as a great achievement moving into 2022. The second achievement I want to touch on is something that was done again prior to me becoming chief, but I think it was a great initiative, was developing new uniforms. The way we look as police officers really demonstrates our professionalism. It also is a representation. We're a billboard for our community. And part of that is being more inclusive to everyone individually, right? Even though we're all uniform, we want to be inclusive of everyone. We're able to do some research, implement a new uniform change that is more body type specific is the way I would describe it. The days of just kind of that blanket medium, large, extra large, and just everybody wears the same depending on what your body type is, these are more fitted appropriately, and I think they look more professional. I think that when you look professional, you feel professional, and it fits you better, you're happier to be here, and you're going to put out a better product. So we're really excited about that, as well as there is a cost savings that was allocated to that as well. And I'd like to thank the deputy chief for really kind of spearheading that and taking that on moving forward to be able to implement that. Lastly, for achievements, we began partnering with Northern Rivers Mobile Crisis at the end of 2019. If you would have asked me 3 years ago who Northern Rivers Mobile Crisis was, I probably wouldn't be able to explain to you exactly what they did or who they were. For those of you out there that don't know what that service is, we're able to partner with these folks to allocate more appropriate community resources when it is a part of a mental health or crisis situation for our community members. So why is this important? Why is this an achievement? Well, part of, again, the CNA recommendations and part of that national kind of trend is that idea that police officers, where is our role? Where is the other resources? How are we providing those things appropriately for our community? And Northern Rivers is allowing us to give those resources that are being requested and are more appropriate to our community members more real time. That only enhances our ability from an operational perspective to be able to deploy our police officers back onto the road to be entering to answer service calls more rapidly and more efficiently as well, because those resources are being utilized when appropriate. So we're really excited about those three things. We think they were excellent achievements, and we look forward to continuing those on and growing from them in 2022. So what are some of the goals for 2022? Well, first and foremost, we all know we need to increase our staffing levels. As the supervisor had mentioned in this budget, and I can't thank everybody that's been a part of this budget process enough, we'd like to get those staffing levels to pre-pandemic levels. This proposed budget, and it is a goal of mine, and I've spoken about it, is to get us back to that round number of 30 sworn members. So how do we do that? Well, we need to work on the continuous recruitment of police officers and candidates for lateral transfers. Meeting this goal would allow our police department to successfully meet the needs of the community and to assist with the well-being of our department members through a more balanced work schedule. When we talk about a continuous recruitment model, again, this is part of the CNA recommendations and the goal for our police department as well, something we need to work towards, is kind of branching out and getting outside of the norm of how we normally have recruited or been reactionary to people that are taking tests. We need to be out in the public, we need to be forward-facing, and we need to be recruiting the best and brightest folks for our community that want to be a part of this change that we have that's going on in our police department. So how do we do that? Another goal would be to develop that long-term recruitment model for our police department, including college recruiting and career fairs. Why is this important? Again, going back to the CNA reform and the task force implementation as part of Governor Cuomo's initiative on police reform, we need to find more qualified candidates and we need to reach a more diverse population of candidates. Going to local colleges, getting out into career fields and fairs is only going to further expand that more diverse populace of potential recruits and candidates from us to be able to select from. And that's going to be more reflective as we bring and recruit those folks in of our community at large. And that's really important to have that. So that's one of our goals as well. Another goal that we have for 2022 is to utilize potential new staffing should the budget be passed as it currently stands for kind of a hybrid position between a community resource officer and a traffic unit officer. In the past, we'd had a traffic enforcement unit that we had when staffing levels were significantly higher than they are now. And it was of great success. Unfortunately, we had to take those positions and reallocate those resources of staffing to other positions because of attrition and retirements. When I say attrition, I mean attrition through retirements in the sense that not that it wasn't funded, but we didn't have people to bring back in to properly staff at that point. So this hybrid position initially, as I said, would be a community resource position and a traffic unit position officer. So why is that important? Well, again, going back to the CNA recommendations of the community resource officer position, that was one of their main recommendations. That position, and the reason I'm proposing that it should be a goal and it should be hybrid initially, depending on community needs, is that we don't fully have defined what a community resource officer is yet. And that's yet to be determined based on this implementation of the reform task force moving forward and through community input. So I think for 2022, it'd be fair to say that until we have that position fully defined, I think it would be okay to kind of have a hybrid model for those two positions combined until we determine whether or not there's a need for that full-time staffing position and what that looks like. And then the last goal for 2022, which is a capital expense that's not reflective in this budget, is obviously something we've been working towards, which is to purchase and introduce new and updated technologies to assist with transparency of policing for our community and police department members, specifically updated dash cameras with newly purchased body cameras. So we're on our 5th test trial, I believe, of body cameras. We're getting real-time feedback from the rank and file about how they feel about those things, and also from, I can't thank Detective Kafag enough for his insight on the back end and working with Seth, our IT expert here at the town of Niskuna, to try to understand what it is our needs are through these body cams and software packages, because there's a lot that goes into that regarding how we transmit that data, how we're going to house that data, maybe how we have to present that data, and that's kind of an ongoing thing. But we would really like to have, by the end of 22, if at all possible, and I know the town's working tirelessly on grants and other funding to come up with that money, and I thank them for that. We'd really like to attempt to start kind of pushing those out to move towards that more progressive police model of transparency for our officers and for our community. So that touches on some of our achievements and our goals. I don't know how you want to do specific to the budget line items. Some of the things, just some highlights of this budget when we talk about it. One of the main things is we have an anticipated retirement of one of our detectives, and we're attempting to take some of that funding from that position and then fully fund a lieutenant's position. Now, that position had been previously funded in prior budgets. It wasn't fully funded for last year, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think it's imperative that moving forward in this budget, that's going to be an area of strength for us. When you talk about a progressive police model, again, and I sound like a broken record here, but part of the CNA recommendation was specific to filling that lieutenant's position. When you talk about oversight of new technologies, when you talk about oversight of new policies, when you're talking about really becoming that well-defined new era police agency, you need to have a strong administrative staff to be able to oversee all of those things and those implementations, and then be growing those things moving forward. With that 3-person staffing, with that lieutenant's position being filled, I think that we can accomplish that. And I think it's imperative that we work towards getting that filled in this budget. We're excited should that have the potential to do that. And we have an excellent candidate that's in the wings standing by if we have that funding. Just going back to the community resource / traffic safety unit officer as a part of this budget. Again, part of that CNA recommendation was for the resource officer. That has yet to be defined as to what that would be, and that would be through community input, through these meetings and these task force implementations. That would be funded in this current budget as it stands as well. The 2022 budget has minimal changes for us. There's some basic contractual increases projected by the comptroller's office, which I can't thank enough for helping me through this to understand it. I don't know if anyone has any specific line item questions that they want to go into now, or any questions about anything I've said so far.
All right, so I do have some questions, maybe not for you, maybe for Ismat or both of you. So as we look at the 2020, we had for administration 154,000 approximately. 2021 was 167, and then our 2022 is 150. So the chief is saying that the lieutenant's position is in this. Is that correct?
I can answer because you told me what the answer is. If you'd like,
I know.
Go ahead.
Yes, it is fully funded. So that is administrative line. That's a good catch, Councilman McParland. I asked that specific question. So out of that 1,600 line, there is 2 secretarial positions and our discovery clerk is what that funding is. And based on that change from the adopted 2021 budget to the tentative 22 budget, it's an anticipation of potentially a full-time executive secretary, 1 position coming in at the correct salary grade and range is what that would be.
So basically, remember, we offered the VRI, the voluntary retirement.
Yes.
I don't know how to do this, but anyway. So that's part of the savings. And you will see throughout the budget that we offered that so we can hire younger, new, fresher faces that will show the salary. So absolutely. So there is funding for the lieutenant, and it is in the personnel salary lines. You will see the lieutenant position added to replace a detective position.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Want me to keep going with my questions?
Yes.
Okay. So I probably sound like a broken record, but I say this often about the vehicle purchases. I've been trying to get those in the budget as a line item every year because it's an expense. We use these cars and we try to trade them in after 3 years. It's just a reoccurring expense, and I see that it's not in there again this year. So that's something I just want to bring to everyone's attention.
Is going to be in the capital budget again. So what we are trying to do is the operating budget trying to get on a solid plan year-to-year basis. And once because we have a plan for next year, right? We have talked about that.
Yes.
And the year after that. So then after a while, it's going to be part of the regular budget.
Yeah, but these vehicles are not like the highway trucks and the things that we keep for 5 to 10 years. They're vehicles that we just 3 years, we're trying to move them out. We found that saves the town money by doing that.
Well, we're still doing that.
Yeah, we are still doing it.
Right.
It's just the way we expense it. I think it's
disagree.
more appropriate to have it
I disagree.
in here as an expense.
It's different than an
item.
administrative expense. It's different than a salary expense.
Well, we've got, firearm purchases and vests and all other sorts of equipment that we go through every year. So that's my sense that's how that should be. And vendor background checks. Now, we increased that a little bit from 2020, 2021. What are your thoughts about that figure, Chief, being the same? I know that we've gotten more requests for that, and some of that does take some more time for vendor background checks. And now our clerk walked in just at the right time. I'm talking about the vendor background checks.
Very time consuming, and we had to raise the fee. We had to raise the fee too because if they live in so many states, it goes up. And there's a lot of training that goes with that too.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on what those costs are at this time. That would be something that would lean on the comptroller to kind of.
Absolutely. So Bill, if you look at the last year, at the actuals for 2020, there was only $88. So look at what we have done is that if we know something specific, we based upon our estimates upon the beige book, the 2022 governor's budget, but we look at also at the last 3 years trends, and we did put an average of that. So you will see if we need more money, that's, so be it. But at this point, that's what we have the contingency for. But right now, we felt that that's adequate.
Yeah, that's just something we're going to need to keep an eye on. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, and I'll add to that.
We did 12
Go ahead.
background checks for last year.
Yep.
Right.
So I think I went and looked in 2019, I believe it was, and kind of based it off the last big year we had. And it did go up, I think we're collecting $50 for that now, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to ask what the fee was.
Yeah.
Yeah, to account for the overhead costs of what it takes our police department to run those vendor background checks, we necessarily had to increase the fee, but also due to COVID, we just sort of blanket decided in concert with the town clerk's office that for safety issues and for the health and safety of our residents, that we did not want solicitors to be presenting to anyone's door. And really that cost is borne out of are soliciting permits that are generated every single year. So that's something that we have to revisit next year because we decided to continue with the prior year's protocol of not allowing those solicitors to solicit in town. And that's expressly based off of pandemic-related safety issues.
Thank you. Last question. So, or what I'd like to point out that we have not put anything in the budget here for body cameras and or maintenance or the costs associated with those. Is that right?
Correct. So it being a capital expense at the moment that was put forth and that is on a separate schedule that's in the following pages. So if you look forward, if you just turn the page a couple more, that's in there as a capital expense. But what we're hoping and what Councilwoman McGraw and the comptroller and I have been working on is working in concert with our grants administrator to ascertain grant funding for this expenditure. So that would be a win-win for everybody. And we believe that we can get that grant funding. And if we can't, there are other mechanisms by which we can provide for the funding for this expenditure. So whether it be, debt financing, fund balance, et cetera. But what we're hoping for is that we can actually pay for this expense via grants.
Yeah, we've had every indication. You keep mentioning CNA. Thank you very much. But CNA was pretty clear with us that they believe that this is the hot area to find grants in right now.
Right, absolutely. But what we want to do is be conscious of the costs that are going to be associated with the maintenance and then keeping track of all the data and the reoccurring expenses with the cameras.
I think the chief, almost as much, Seth is very on top of
And
those
like-
data issues.
And like I said, Detective Kavaga, I can't say enough good things.
Absolutely.
On this. He is very in touch with those things and understanding kind of from a maintenance IT perspective, how that's going to be transitioned. But I agree with you. It is in the capital expense, I think in the outline in the proposal that was submitted to the comptroller's office, all of that, the different options versus, an in-house server versus a cloud-based server versus just because it's going to be an expense. It certainly
Right.
is. It certainly is.
Yeah. And Bill, on top of that, we have applied for different grants fundings for the body cams.
Right, I know that.
So we are hoping that we will hear some good news.
Right. Let's hope so. That's for the capital expense.
If not, then we are going to put in the capital, as the supervisor and Denise said. Okay.
That's all the questions I have right now.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question or two. Thank you very much for your presentation. I know you referred to the goal of having 30 sworn members of the police department. Are those active members, like that you could call on to work at any time, or does that include people who might be on leave or out on an injury?
So that would be inclusive of all fully funded, staffed, sworn members. So if
Okay.
somebody is on an extended leave due to injury or disability, that would be inclusive of them as well.
Okay. And about how many hours of overtime do you think that what's budgeted will cover?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to turn that over to the comptroller to tell me what that projection is.
So in 2021, we had 29 officers. So with the including, bringing it to full staff, we are expecting that the overtime is going to decrease.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Councilwoman Weber. And I appreciate that you put in here that it was pre-pandemic staffing levels, because we did have the police department up to a much better staffing level before the pandemic hit. And then are you going to ask your usual question, Councilwoman McGraw, of the chief, or that you usually ask of all the department heads? So in this budget, does this adequately fund your department for the year?
The word adequate can be defined a lot of different ways. I'm never going to say no to more money from the town of Niskuna to make our police department more robust. However, based on being fiscally responsible and what I think that we need for our community and for our police department, yes, it does.
Thank you.
That's great. Good job, Bill.
Well, Denise, that was your usual question.
Well, it's your department, so I didn't want to step
Okay.
on you. I can't help myself, so I've got to ask.
Go ahead.
Should we increase funding for an animal control officer?
So I had a conversation offline with our current dog warden.
Right, exactly. Thank you for explaining that. And if you want to, a little bit more,
There's a
yeah.
difference between the animal control officer and a dog warden. And I'm not going to get into the specifics about it, but we currently, as it stands, have a dog warden. They deal with domestic animals, specifically dogs, and sometimes other animals if we ask, but generally dogs. From an animal control perspective, according to the recommendation from Dave, who I trust, with his understanding of ag markets and everything else, it seems like that might be a heavy lift for us to take on as a position that's staffed and funded. However,
Should we go back to the contractual,
I
what we
think-
used to do, right? Because
we-
right now, don't even really have the position filled, so,
you got to right where I wanted to go. I think
Yep.
we need to absolutely entertain exploring contracting out some form of outside of whatever his periphery is on a real-time basis as deemed emergency condition necessary, possibly by the chief of police, to have some sort of formulated response where it's not just we're coming out and dealing with every animal that is in someone's yard, but it's a defined need from a safety perspective of the community.
right. I mean, I think there is a fine line between asking our officers to answer these calls
Certainly.
and to expect a homeowner who may have, I don't know, a 60-pound raccoon in their dining room to start going in their garage and start calling through the phone book or your phone, and trying to find somebody to come do that for you. So I just don't know. And if you think that we can kind of hit a happy medium here where we can contract with whomever.
I think we need to explore that opportunity.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that's all I have. Oh, and no, so I just had one other thing, and because I know we're running late on time now. So we've got the dash cams. We're going toward police body cams. One of the things that Leslie doesn't like, but I'm not as opposed to, is something that the DA's office is doing and the county is doing, which is the cameras around town, the closed circuit TV, right? We've had some conversations about those. Do you have any thoughts on those? I mean, I know Fran did. I mean, Fran was working toward that, so I just don't.
I'm certainly not opposed to having discussions about having cameras in identified areas of need for the community. I know there are some hesitations from community members about privacy. things of that
Absolutely.
nature, and I'm very sensitive to those things because I don't want to infringe upon
Exactly.
privacy or anything of the sort.
It's a small town, and we're not
Correct.
watching everything everybody's doing.
However, when you talk about bigger commercial and business areas, specifically you mentioned Square, the State Street area,
Right.
I think that is something we should actively engage.
And that's what we have now. We have the county has something up over in that
We
direction.
need to-
Yeah.
We need to further engage those things because I've seen just in speaking with other law enforcement agencies and even with some of the things we've been able to resolve utilizing Schenectady's cameras, or if somebody, takes a credit card from the skin and uses it in Rotterdam because they have cameras, technology is helping facilitate solving crimes and utilizing less resources that cost money to get to that.
And our neighboring towns have them. So if we're the hole in between, Colony's got them and Rotterdam's got them. And Schenectady's got them. So if we're that hole in the donut, I don't.
But again, those cameras are in identified areas of, either a high crime identified area or potential like a business district. It's not in residential.
Absolutely, right. We're not putting them up on the telephone poles in people's backyards. Absolutely.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Certainly not. That's that conversation we need to.
Right. And I don't even know if they are appropriate, but I think there's something that seems to be missing in this. So excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate.
Everybody else?
Yeah, it's like you've been here for years.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Great job.
Great job. Okay.
We did this sort of backwards. Why didn't Eric get to go first? This is going to be like 3 minutes long.
Okay. Next, our town assessor, Eric Amberger.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thanks for hearing me.
So there's not a lot here.
No.
You answered a bunch of my questions offline just now. So is there anything here you want to call our attention to?
At this point, I just want to know state that the assessor's job is to maintain a fair and equitable assessment role. We do administer over 5,700 exemptions for the town. And that does include people enrolled in the Star Credit, even though that's administered by the state. We do a lot of work with that. My goal is to maintain a high level of customer service to our town. One of the things that's going to be happening maybe this year, I hope, is we'll be implementing what's called ACEs, which is going to replace RPS. I know it was supposed to happen a couple of years ago. It was delayed. And the last time I heard, it was going to happen for this year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Some of the things I did in the last year is with the approval of the town board is for our senior citizens, instead of having to come into town hall and renew their senior citizens exemptions, we asked that they just renew at the same rate as last year, just to keep everybody safe during the pandemic. And we also did a mailing last year of over 200 people, 200 homeowners who may be eligible for the senior citizen exemption. And we had over 20, I think about 22 people enroll in the exemption.
Great.
I'm very proud of that. For people that are eligible for that exemption, that translates directly to food on the table.
Absolutely.
That's great.
I'll be doing something similar this year, just on a smaller scale. I can compare and contrast my databases and just really narrow it down to new people on the list. And maybe in a couple of years, pick up the entire database again, just to see if anybody fell through the cracks.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
I try and do it, and again, I just trying to have maintain a fair and equitable role.
That's
That's
great.
really my first goal.
Yeah.
That's great you're doing that, Eric.
That's a lot of work. So thank you very much. Do you do that or do you plan to do that for the veterans exemptions as well? Or
I do not plan on doing that with veterans exemptions. That generally, veterans are in touch with the local VA.
and they plug them in. Okay,
There's a very good network with the VA
great.
to make sure everybody gets their exemptions. Although I did find one house that borders Miniscule and Schenectady, falls on both sides of the property line. And I noticed that they had the exemption on the Miniscule side, but the exemption on the Schenectady side expired 25 years ago, something like that, back when they had different rules. And I was in contact with the Schenectady assessor to say this person needs to be enrolled. And I was able to get as much paperwork as I could to the Schenectady assessor. And all the homeowner had to do was sign on the dotted line.
That's great.
And they had the lion's share of the exemption over there too, so it's really a better benefit. So just a good benefit for that person.
And I also want to point out, so you took on that extra work, that you figured out this veterans thing, you're figuring out the senior exemptions, the star exemptions. All the work that you've done on the park districts this year, this was something that just kind of got dropped in our laps. We really didn't know. Folks started asking questions, whether they were just regular residents or some other folks who may have had other reasons for asking questions about park districts, but that fell to you. So identifying all the park districts, reaching out, there was a community meeting for one of the park districts because they want to kind of figure out where they want to go from here, answering the questions as to what exactly is a park district and what you get for your park district dollars, who lives in them, who does not. That all fell to you this year. And I just really want to thank you because I know that was a lot of extra work, getting out mailings and answering questions. And so thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and we're here to serve. I mean, we really want to give support to the community. There are other organizations in town who do help out with their databases, NCAP, and some of the fire districts as well. So yeah, we're here to, that's part of our customer service. But thank you for the acknowledgement. It always
No,
helps.
thank you. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It
Eric.
was wonderful.
Sorry to make you wait.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You
You too.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's next. It's the man, the myth, and the legend, Seth Goldstein.
Hello, everybody.
So I saw you wanted flying cars.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's customary in technology and software to include an Easter egg that's a little lighthearted and fun inside your software or your hardware. You know, Tesla, you can change in the navigation system, you can change it to the submarine car from the Bond movies.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
That's
You
funny.
know, I just want, basically, I put it in just, you know, when Ismet was having her sleepless nights putting the budget together, that she could have a good laugh at me.
It was really funny. It woke me
So,
up.
It made me laugh.
Well, look, at least I know you guys were reading it.
Right.
So, as you all know, I took over for Bill Lawrence, who did a very good job for the last 20, 30 years, taking care of the computer systems for the town. Obviously I have a slightly different style than Bill does. And, you know, there are certain things that I believe need to be taken care of first over other things. So when I took over, the first thing I did was go through and ask the comptroller's office to provide me with invoices for everything we spent money on, computer, internet, and phone related. In doing that, I found almost $10,000 worth of savings between overbilling at Time Warner for various services. Combining services, I put up a what's called a point-to-point wireless bridge at the rec center and combined the internet at the rec center to the pool, because we were paying for 2 internet services for buildings that are, you know, 50 yards apart. In changing that over, it was about a $2,800 annual savings. I'm going to be doing the same thing at the water and sewer garages. So there's been to date about $12,000 annual savings by doing that type of stuff. I have decommissioned a bunch of servers. I am in the process of upgrading other servers to help protect the security of the town. As you well know, my 3 children's birth certificates are sitting on the town servers, so I have a vested interest in keeping their identity safe.
You would have loved the year that they released our retirement information online and on a piece of paper with our social security numbers. You would have liked that year. That was a fun time when a resident called and told me, "I'm reading your social security number right now, Denise." Yeah.
You know, maybe they thought that the LifeLock guy had a
Exactly.
you know. The other thing I started was I noticed that we were purchasing only OEM cartridges for laser printers. We could get high yield aftermarket cartridges. The toner, as long as you buy quality aftermarket, the toner has no detriment to the printer. The company that I use gives us a 1-year warranty in case the cartridges leak or anything like that, or the drums don't work inside them. But I haven't really had a problem. That has resulted in approximately $2,500 worth of savings annually. Let's see. Along with changing out the internet service provider at the wastewater treatment plant, the rec center, the pool, and the water treatment plant, came along with cleaning up 30 to 40 years worth of old wiring in those locations. So it's now much cleaner, much easier to diagnose. If something goes wrong, we can fix it a lot easier. I did hear while you guys were asking the police chief about cameras around town. I have purchased through one of the police line items, because I was able to save some money there by eliminating something that we weren't going to be using anymore. So I converted those funds to buy a couple cameras that can work on Wi-Fi and a camera that works off of the cellular network. And we actually were able to arrest some people that were trespassing and damaging the pool earlier this year. And last week we put out the cellular camera at the transfer station because people have been illegally dumping. As a matter of fact, Matt's not here, but apparently the people that do the metal recycling that pick up the metal dumpster threatened to drop us as a client because there were mattresses in the metal dumpster. and they can't be recycled. So I just made a report with the police department for somebody that dumped tires in the metal recycling that we caught with the cellular-based camera. So they do have their place. And the ones that I'm, when we have hotspots I'm placing around town, they cost us about $10 a month to deploy. So not a huge deal. So another huge one was the water treatment plant. As of last week, they were operating off an air pack card that got 2 bars of service because they're in a hole where they are down by Lock 7. So cell phone coverage is very bad down there, but that's what they were using for internet. It was holding back the entire project for them to update to a new SCADA system. The cost to the town to put that system in, if they were going to go through standard government spectrum pricing, would have been about $50,000. Because I changed providers for a couple of the other locations, like the rec center and the wastewater treatment plant, the build-out budgets from those that the salesperson had to work with were then applied to the water treatment plant. So we were actually able to get the water treatment plant hooked up for approximately $5,000. And that $5,000 was spent to put in 2 telephone poles, which came out of Matt's budget, 2 telephone poles, and dig a trench and bury conduit. So instead of $50,000, it cost us just under $5,000. And with that, because we were limited by our telephone provider and our internet provider, because we had to use a jet card for $40 a month, and we had to use traditional old telephone lines for almost $200 a month. Within 3 years, that we're going to be saving about $1,500 a year. That'll, after 3 to 4 years, we'll have gotten the initial investment back, and they'll have high-speed internet, so we can upgrade the SCADA system and make the water system more efficient in town. So I'm very proud of that one. We just finished that this week. In 2 weeks' time, Ismet, Charlie, and Hisham and I will be meeting about replacing the phone system in town. Currently, we have an older system. It is semi-VoIP, meaning that it is semi going over the internet right now, but it relies on older technology. It's very expensive to maintain, and the phones are all starting to fail. The screens on them are starting to go blank. And to replace the phones, it literally will cost us more than going to a new system and getting a new phone to replace it. Ideally, I believe that there's going to be at least $10,000 a year savings in that, and upfront cost is going to be around $20,000 to $25,000. So it'll be a payback within 2.5 years. So that we're going to try to get done before the end of the year. I'm pushing to get it done before the end of the year so it can be installed beginning of next year. And then, we also phased out the alarm monitoring system. I just picked up the equipment recently from the dispatch center because the police department used to monitor alarm systems, but they were charging more than what an alarm company would charge, and it was costing us more than the town was taking in for monitoring. So it made no sense whatsoever. So as to my budget, you'll see that most of my line items are flat or they have an increase. Like the controller, most of my budget is the maintenance costs on software packages. I don't have much say on how that goes. Like if you look at the comptroller's office, that one went up, but that's because they're going to be getting a new module that's going to eliminate a module for another, that's going to be in one of the other lines. So trying to consolidate into one package as opposed to paying individual companies, $5,000 here, $3,000 here, that type of thing. So, and Do you guys have any questions for me? I know I just rattled on for a while.
I got a couple questions, Eric. Great job, by the way. I know you've really done a great job working on technology and with the cameras and everything and all the stuff you're doing. And pretty much everything you're doing is saving us money some way or other. So great job on all of that. One question, you were talking about the new phone system. Is there anything in the budget for that, or are we doing that under capital projects?
Actually, the equipment capital outlay of the 2021 should be pretty close to covering it.
For a new phone system?
Yeah, for the new phone system, because we're going to be doing a voice over IP full setup. I'm hoping that Charlie and I can take on the task of converting over, like the wiring's already in the building, but the ends have to be replaced. So if we can take care of that in-house, we can, and we purchase the equipment outright for the PoE networking switches for the phone equipment. We're not paying a middleman for the equipment. You know, I'm trying to keep costs as low as possible in every aspect.
So you're doing this basically yourself. You're not going to an outside vendor like Gracecom or just one name I know or some other company to
That's
do
what
it.
I'm trying to do. Just like if you look underneath the supervisor's area right now where she's sitting, I can show you pictures of what it looked like beforehand. I redid a rack mount. I rewired everything. I purchased the wires on eBay because they were cheaper than, you know, going to a regular shop. One of those pieces was a used piece, but it was in good functional order. So there was, and that would have been a $3,000 piece, but I paid $300 for it. You know, there's nothing wrong with spending money, but spending money for no good reason or spending money where you don't need to spend it is my general rule of thumb. I come from a business background.
Well, that's great. We're all about that. That's great.
The hybrid setup down here, just as an example, the costs associated with it were this camera, which was $30, that keyboard, which was $20. The two wires I found in the basement in Bill's surplus. The computer was a surplus computer that was given to us by the court system because they upgraded the court computers. So essentially, the hybrid setup, at least down here, was less than $200.
That's great.
Okay.
I only got one other question. I know we've approved for, I think it's Verizon to come in and do 5G, right?
Mhm.
Do you have any information about the status of any of that? And that would help you with your cellular cameras and these other things, correct?
Well, right now, I believe they're just past the approval phase with Laura. It's not so much going to help us in getting internet.
It's going to help the residents have better quality and faster internet
Right.
service.
We
It
wouldn't
isn't,
be able to use that.
Not at this point because of where they're going to be going. Eventually, yes, it will help us, but
The areas you talk about are our outlying areas, like the water plant or the rec center and these other places.
unfortunately, no, not yet. But here's the thing: our current internet, like at the rec center, we're currently paying for 2 phone lines and internet. Because here's the thing: I had the option of going with the government section, or I could go with the corporation section. I actually purchased it through the business class section because one phone line, I want to say it's $89.99 for 2 phone lines and the internet there. I don't think you're going to get it very much cheaper, no matter where you go at this point. But unfortunately, they don't have Fios. If there was Fios in the area, I would have jumped on it in a second. As a matter of fact, the water and sewer garage and the highway garage, when I combine the 2 of those networks, we're going to be switching over to Fios because it is available there. And part of my plan for next year is to adjust our offsite backups. Right now, we currently under, let's see, I believe it's the, just bear with me for a second. believe it's the engineering line. Yeah,
Yep.
that looks like the right one.
It is.
Yeah, we're currently paying around $500 a month for offsite cloud backup. I want to change the backup scheme, so we're actually backing up from here to the water garage, and then we'll have a smaller charge of a cloud backup that's kind of a slower type of thing where we're not backing up the full thing every single night offsite into the cloud, but we do have an offsite backup that's secure. But that should help eliminate a significant portion of that line every year.
That's all the questions I have.
Like I said, I have a lot of plans, but the problem is you can't do everything at once. Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a foundation of a house. If I pull out a block here, I don't want the whole house to fall down. So I have to pull down and then build back up and then move over here and work a little bit more on another spot. So as soon as the phones get done, it will allow me to adjust the security of the network to be much more secure.
The phones will let you, because that was going to be my next question for you, the security of the network. I mean, obviously, I think there's a myriad of concerns.
There are a myriad of concerns. One of the things I want to do is get the email hosting off, but I have to be able to adjust some of the services to afford that if we're going to keep my budget the same, because to host the email someplace else, we would be talking probably 5 figures, maybe more a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's why I kind of have to. So basically, right now with the phones, before I switched over to the rec center was directly connected to town hall,
Mhm.
so that the extensions could work and the voicemail could go back and forth. But that also meant that the senior center computer lab, which is not monitored, was also technically connected to town hall. Okay, so by removing the rec center from that, but what we have currently is like what's called a hub and spoke. So in other words, town hall's in the center, and then there's outlying VPN connections to the rec center, the water garage, the sewer garage. I think those were the only ones, but slowly I want to eliminate those, because once we change to a full VoIP system, as long as each individual location has internet, we're not technically hosting the phone system in town hall.
Right.
So that will then allow me to, right now we currently have multiple holes open to the internet. And I don't want to go too far in depth on this, just because if somebody's watching that knows what they're doing, they can.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. But basically, we currently have 2 major gateways to the internet. I want to consolidate that down to 1, but I can't do that until I get rid of those VPN connections from the other locations.
That's enough information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just, for exactly the reason you stated yourself.
But if you guys ever want a personal meeting where I can bring diagrams and stuff like that, I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.
That was great. Such an asset.
Mhm. Thank you, Seth. And Seth failed to mention that he has already saved us a few $1,000s just this year alone.
He touched on it a little bit.
Okay,
at the
good.
beginning.
About
Well,
10,000.
I just wanted to further highlight that.
Exactly.
because
Thank you very
that
much.
is
I think we all have to.
so important.
We'll be over 12,000 a year, hopefully by the end of this month.
Mhm.
Because I have one more major project plan, like I said, to combine the water garage and the highway garage and consolidate their services, because they're both paying for separate internet services. So we've got 2 internet services there at, I believe, $150 a piece. And we've got telephone equipment, because we're paying for what's called AdTran. Like it's called an AdTran. It's basically a gateway that controls the flow of phone information. So Those, I believe, are $80 a piece, plus the individual long-distance charges. It's going to add up fairly quickly once we get that consolidated also. So,
Thank you.
okay.
I just
Thank you.
want to point out
Great
one
job.
more thing in
Yep.
his budget that you didn't even notice,
What's that?
but it's at the computer services for the supervisor, 13,410. So we have taken that to create a human resources position, which is basically budget neutral.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Seth. Thank you for all the savings.
Yeah,
Thank you,
really.
Seth.
Great
awesome.
stuff.
Thank
Really
you for
great.
all the
Thank
saving.
Thank you.
For everything.
Yeah, no, for everything.
I know.
Just
For
such an
all of this.
asset.
Couldn't do without him.
Exactly.
All the cameras.
MacGyver, yeah.
MacGyver.
The paperclip and two other
Exactly.
things, and Yasmin is broadcasting worldwide from right here.
Right.
I don't know, the last presentation is by the judges. I don't know where they are. So we
Then
can,
I remembered they didn't come last year, too, right?
Okay. So we can present their budget,
No,
in their absence, or we can give them the opportunity if they have some other time to
I will-
present on one of the other days. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll reach out to them and see if they're available tomorrow or
Okay.
Wednesday.
that'd be much better.
Okay. All right. Are there any further questions? All righty. Well, thank you all for sitting through our first budget workshop and our budget presentation. And
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you all so much. We're going to reconvene tomorrow. Let me just check my calendar so I make sure I'm giving you all the proper time. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. is going to be our budget workshop number 2. So we will see you all again tomorrow morning. For anyone who's watching, you can also stream that meeting live. It's also going to be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can request to attend it in person. So that meeting is going to be reconvened right here in the town boardroom tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. So